With President Putin at the top of their wanted list, ministers from around the world are meeting here in the UK today to discuss how to hold war criminals to account.
A warrant for the Russian leader's arrest was issued on Friday. He is accused of being personally responsible for the abduction of children from Ukraine. Well, The Sun's defence editor, Jerome Starkey, has just returned from Ukraine. He's met families who say their loved ones were taken away. Jerome has just been awarded a very significant honour, Reporter of the Year. So congratulations on that for your hugely significant reporting from Ukraine. Tell us, Jerome, about this particular issue. Russia forcibly deporting children, ripping children away from their families, taking them to Russia. And now President Putin faces charges for it. It's a war crime.
It is a war crime, and it's one of the most horrific allegations that's emerged from a war that has had no shortage of horrific and, well, of horror. Ukraine claims that about 16,000 children have been forcibly removed from their homes from Ukrainian territory and taken into Russian territory. I mean, in my experience, I've certainly met individuals when areas were liberated and when we were able to move into places that Russian forces had been occupying. I met a man whose son had disappeared. That was during the occupation. He believes his son was probably executed. But then his wife, his daughter, his son-in-law and his grandchildren were among 70 people who were living in this village who were forced onto a bus at gunpoint and driven onto Russian territory. Now, he hadn't had any contact with them for a couple of months by the time we spoke to him. Now, part of the reason was because the village where he was living in had no mobile phone signal. And a lot of the people in that village, when we made it there, were asking us to try and make contact with their families. But it was, in fact, something we found very difficult to do, impossible to do with the ones who were in Russia. We managed to get in touch with some of the refugees who'd fled in other directions.
But, I mean, having your children taken away by occupying forces, not knowing where they are, unable to contact them, that's honestly makes you feel sick.
It's appalling. I mean, it's unimaginable. Some of these children, we understand, have been taken from institutions, but some of them were school children, and their parents were told that they were going on a school trip.
When you say from institutions, you mean orphanages?
Some of them were taken from orphanages, from care homes, from boarding schools.
And what do we think is happening to them?
Well, it seems like... I mean, we know that at least one family has appeared at a rally, at one of Putin's sort of propaganda rallies in Moscow. But we think most of them are going to re-education camps. They're being taught Russian. They're being forced to sing the Russian national anthem every morning. They're being brainwashed. And Ukraine certainly thinks this is part of a concerted effort to sort of wipe away, erase their Ukrainian identity.
Jerome, thank you.
Karim Khan, British lawyer who issued the arrest warrant against Putin, who's determined to see the president in the dock, who's described this case as a defining moment for international justice. He joins us now. Mr. Khan, welcome to the programme. I know you've been to Ukraine a number of times to see firsthand what has been happening. I know that we have times in Darfur, in the Balkans, where war criminals have been brought to justice. The Russians aren't recognising the action you are taking. Is it possible for you actually to get Putin into court to answer for these crimes?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me. Independent judges of Pre-Trial Chamber 2 issued the warrants. I made the application as a result of the investigations the team has been carrying out very intensively over the last year. I think what we've seen, as you allude to, that international criminal law is not as strong as people may want, but it's shown itself time and time again to be quite resilient. Milosevic, Karadzic, Mladic, Hissan Habre, in Africa, from the Rwandan genocide, from Cambodia. There are now increasing numbers of instances where people who thought they were untouchable, that were above the law, that wielded power, have been brought to courts for independent and impartial trials and adjudication. So our job is to follow the evidence, and that's exactly what we did when we submitted the applications, and the judges have verified that there is a case for these two individuals to answer.
There was speculation last year that it might not be possible for the International Criminal Court in The Hague to do this work, that there might need to be a special, separate tribunal process, like happened with Nuremberg after the Second World War. But it feels as though the meeting today, with all the justice ministers, the fact that you've issued the warrant means that you are now the people who are leading this charge to bring Mr. Putin to justice.
Well, the International Criminal Court is, from every yardstick, a child of Nuremberg. It's born of the principle that the kind of crimes that shock the conscience of humanity should be investigated and there should be no impunity. And this is why this year is the 25th anniversary of the signing of the Rome Statute, which created the International Criminal Court. We need to do better around the world. We need to make sure the law is applied consistently, but the Ukraine theatre of battle is one where there's terror for so many children and women and men. So much destruction is taking place, and our message is the law is not for the lawyers, it's not for The Hague, it's for humanity around the world, and we need to do collectively. Lawyers, politicians, diplomats, people with authority need finally to wake up and start realising there are these principles that must be complied with.
Can I ask, Mr. Khan, and it's a kind of personal and slightly sensitive question, but people who face up to Vladimir Putin often face consequences. And I just wonder whether that's something that you are concerned about.
Well, I'm concerned always in every situation for victims and witnesses. For myself, you know, we have a job to do, we will do it. But I think the important thing around the world is that individuals that are brave enough to speak up, whether for the defence or for the prosecution, that are willing to speak the truth, have a right to be protected, and individuals from any side of a conflict, whatever their truth is, have a right to be protected. And there are these very sophisticated mechanisms that have been tried and tested at the International Criminal Court that hopefully will reassure victims and witnesses that their rights are foremost in our mind.
Yeah. Mr. Khan, good luck with your meeting today. It's good to see international cooperation and the rule of law putting justice foremost against dictators and people who act outside the law. So all power to your efforts, and thank you for joining us.
Doing important work. Karim Khan, Chief Prosecutor for the International Criminal Court. Thank you. And Jerome, thanks very much indeed.